Hello everyone, welcome to our next session. So in this class we are going to learn about parallel priority interrupts and how do they operate, what are the different things which we have in parallel priority interrupt and how the interrupts are generated and why do we need parallel priority interrupt if we were having a daisy chain with us already present. Now in the case of parallel priority interrupt, we have an interrupt register as well as we have a mask register. So in the case of the daisy chaining, we were not having any control over the priorities which we have defined once. So once the priorities of devices were defined, there was no way to change or there was no way to make any kind of changes inside that priority. But in the case of parallel priority interrupt, we have something known as a mask register. Now this mask register is useful to have a authority like which device can interrupt the other device, so we can control that by using the mask register. And generally the priority is given to the device which is having higher speed. So disk is having the highest speed, so it is connected with 0, which is the first value with the priority encoder. For printer it is a slight slower device than reader, then keyboard. So any device can be located at any of the position, and according to that we have a mask register. So this mask register is one which is programmable, so it can be used to program like how the operations are going to work. It can be programmed to like to disable the lower priority interrupt while the higher priority interrupts are being serviced. So you can use it to also to do it in the opposite way. It can also prioritize the disk over the lower priority devices such as your keyboard. So when keyboard is executing, still your disk will be able to interrupt the CPU. But if disk is executing, keyboard will not be able to interrupt your CPU. So that is how you can implement it with the help of mask register. Whenever you want to interrupt, the mask register bit should be 1 at that place. Like if no one is interrupting or no one has generated any interrupt related to CPU, if this value is 1 and printer has generated the interrupt, like this value is 1 and this value is 1, both are ones, binary ones, then only CPU can be interrupted. If this value is 1 and correspondingly the mask register should also contain a value 1. If both are 1, then only it can generate a interrupt. So the next circuit which we have in the parallel priority interrupt is our priority encoder. Now this priority encoder is having a logic which is to simply give us the output by using a by using the priorities of the devices. So simply you can say it is if you look into it, it is a kind of an encoder, and the name which is given to it, it is a priority encoder, but it works as an encoder. Like what the encoder does, decoder simply converts two inputs to four outputs, like 2 raised to the power 4. That is what a decoder does. So decoder, if we have two inputs, so it will change it into 4. If there are three inputs, so it will change it into 8. Now in parallel priority encoder or priority encoder, it is just performing the reverse of it. It is simply taking four inputs and converting them into two outputs. So now they have defined it with the help of a priority, that the devices which are connected, they are connected in accordance with the priority. So the all the devices, like any device which is connected with I0 is having highest priority. The device connected with I1 is having a priority which is lower than I0, then I2, then I3. So this is the least priority device, this is the highest priority device. So what happens when we are using a priority encoder? These four inputs get converted into two outputs. So one is named as X, the other is named as Y. Now, like In the case of a decoder, it was the reverse. Like when these two are 0 0, the output was this was D1, sorry, D0, D1, D2, and D3. This value was 1, rest all were 0 in the case of a decoder. When this value becomes 0 1, the second value was 1, rest all were 0. When it was 1 0, this value was 1, rest were 0. And when these two were 1 1, the D3 was 1 and rest all were 0. Now in this priority encoder, it is happening in the reverse order. So in this case, if we are having four inputs I0, I1, I2, I3. If this value is 1, then the address which we are going to load will be 0. If this value is 1, then the value which we are going to load will be 1 0. If it is the third value which is 1, then it will be y. If the fourth value is 1, then it will be 1. So this is how it works. Like we from these four we will get two outputs. Now this is done with the help of a priority. So they say that it is a priority encoder, but it is actually an encoder on which the devices are connected with in a priority. Now how we get it done? That is with the help of the inputs. So we are not directly connecting the inputs with it. Instead of directly connecting the devices, we connect them through the registers. Now this is one register which we are having, which is interrupt register. Then we have a mask register, and we put a AND gate between these two. First bit of this and first bit of this. So we get a AND gate at this place. So this AND gate is going to restrict the values which are going into the encoder. So if we want that nobody should be able to interrupt the CPU when disk is processing. So what we will do, we will make this value like this 1000. Now even if this value is generating an interrupt, this value will reach to a AND gate and this value will be 1, but corresponding value in the mask register is 0. So 1 and 0 will be 0. So it will not be able to generate a interrupt. So this is how we control the interrupt generation by using a mask register. When this value is 0, it means no device is making an interrupt. So if no device is making an interrupt, then any of these devices, like if this wants to generate an interrupt, this mask register will be 1. So if it is 1, then this interrupt will be generated and a corresponding value of 10 will be loaded to the vector address. Okay. So then after this, we have two more values. One is IST, one is IEN. This is for interrupt status and this is for interrupt enable. This IST value will become 1 only when one of the device out of the devices which are connected has generated an interrupt. If there is any interrupt generated by any of this device, then this IST will be 1. And when this is 1, only at that time this address which we have got from this place will be loaded to a vector address, because this is a bus buffer. Like it is going to have two values here. Rest of the values are 0 0 0 0 0. And when it will be enabled, it will only be enabled when the value is when we are having a value of IST is equal to 1. Why? Because it is connected by using a AND gate at this place. So we are having two AND gates here. One is connected by IEN, which is telling you whether you can interrupt the CPU or not. If a higher priority device is already executing some interrupt, so you can't interrupt the CPU. But if there is no device which is executing, then you can interrupt. So this is one, and the other part is connected here, and there is one another part which is connected with the interrupt acknowledgement, right? So this is an interrupt to CPU, this is an interrupt from CPU, interrupt acknowledgement, and this interrupt acknowledgement is connected here, and we have enabled the line. Now what is going to happen in this case? This is an interrupt to CPU. Now, as we discussed, that when there is an interrupt generated by some device, like any of these devices which are connected, when there is an interrupt generated by them, this IST value will become 1. If this value is 1, it means there is one value uh, at this place which is going to become 1. Like it is connected with this place, it is also connected here. So this value is 1, this value will be 1. So these two values are 1. After this, if you can interrupt the CPU, like it is possible to interrupt, then this IEN value will be 1. If the IEN value is 1, it means it is also at this place. So it means interrupt is generated by some device, and it is possible to interrupt the CPU. Once these two conditions met, then this signal is sent to the CPU. So it is received by your CPU that yes, some device has interrupted. So once CPU gives the acknowledgement that yes, you can interrupt or I'm free, then this value becomes 1. And once all these three values are 1, then this address gets loaded to the CPU. Then CPU gets this address, that it is XY address. So this is how the IEN and this whole parallel priority interrupt works. This complete circuit is known as parallel priority interrupts, and this small circuit is known as priority encoder. And this line is IEN, which is interrupt enable, and we have IST, that is interrupt status. Now, interrupt status is simply telling that when any of these devices has generated an interrupt, this IST value will become 1, whereas IEN will simply be enabled by using some commands. So there are some commands like IUN and IUF. If you did the interrupt cycle, in that interrupt cycle, we were having some commands known as IUN and IUF. So according to those commands, it will be turned on or turned off on the basis of that whether you can interrupt the CPU or not. The mask register is only used to clear mask register is only used to set up a priority between devices, that which device can interrupt the CPU. Now that thing is also implemented in a priority encoder, that how it is going to generate these addresses. So we will discuss about that in this truth table. In parallel priority encoder, what do we have? There are four inputs starting from I0, I1, I2, I3. The value of D, on the other hand, we have outputs. So just simply remember that it is a similar concept as that of the decoder, encoder. Now, next is IST. IST is going to remain 1 in all the cases except if none of the device has generated an interrupt. Otherwise, it is going to remain as 1 only. Now, what does it mean? The first device, like in this case, it is a disk. So if first device generates an interrupt, it doesn't matter that whether the other devices are generating an interrupt or not. They are not going to get serviced because mask register is going to contain a value 0 in front of it. So then there is no worry whether it is 1, whether it is 0. So it is a don't care condition at these two places. And the output which will be generated is 0 0, and the ist value is 1 because there is some device which has generated a interrupt. Now this is for disk. Now if the other device which we are connecting is a printer, now if printer generates a interrupt, now what is the first condition? The first condition is that if printer wants to interrupt, the disk should not have an interrupt. So disk value, the disk should not have an interrupt. Only then this printer can interrupt the CPU. So now if this printer has has an interrupt generated, rest two values doesn't matter whether they have an interrupt or not. It doesn't matter at all. Now the output will be 0 and 1, and the ist is still 1 because one of the device is having a interrupt generated. Now let us move to the third device, which is I think a printer, a reader. Now if a reader generates an interrupt, now if reader has an interrupt, then it will be better that these two values like printer and disk should not have an interrupt generated already. Then this value will be 1, and last value will not matter. What is the last value? And this output will be 1 0, and still ist will be 1 because there is one device which has generated a interrupt. Now in the last case, if a keyboard generates an interrupt, so all the values before keyboard should be 0, only then it can interrupt. And once it has interrupted, the value at this place will be 1 1, and still there is an interrupt generated. Okay, so ist is there. If none of the devices generating an interrupt, all are doing their own task, it is fine. No device is having an interrupt, which means it will not work. So that is why these two processes are here. And ist value is 0. Now if ist value is 0, it means you can't interrupt the CPU. So if there is no interrupt generated, why should we interrupt the CPU then? So that is why this ist is 0. So we can check that at this place. If ist is 0, it means this value will be 0. If this value is 0, this value is also 0. So no interrupt will be sent to the CPU because there is a AND gate. And if there is an AND gate will become 1 only if both the inputs are 1. And if ist is 0, the output is going to remain 0. So it is not going to generate a interrupt. So this is what we have in our parallel priority interrupt. Now, after parallel priority interrupt, we are having another scheme which we discussed earlier as well, that is DMA. So DMA is already discussed. So in the case of DMA, we were having a better improvement over priority in your programmed input output or your interrupt initiated input output. So it was working better. But in DMA, still the CPU has to initialize the DMA. CPU is still involved, even though it is for a shorter period of time. Like it only has to initialize the value on DMA and that's it. But still, it is involved in the transfer. So what the new improvement they did was, instead of using the CPU to perform the input output processes, they introduced a new CPU which is capable of performing input output operations. Now, all the input output devices which are connected with your CPU are not processed by your computer, like they are not processed by the CPU, they are now processed by input output processor. Its name signifies that it is only for the purpose of performing input and output operations. So this is a diagram which is given that how it is connected. there is a memory bus. Earlier, what was happening? Input output processor was there, CPU was there, and DMA was used. Now in IOP, we still have a DMA, but the controller of that DMA is IOP. IOP controls the functionality of that DMA. So now DMA works under the order of or under the commands of input output processor. So let us talk about it in little bit detail. Now what happens is processor with a direct memory access capability that communicates the input output device is known as input output processor. Channel access memory by cycle stealing. So the same process is used as it was used in DMA. Stored in the main memory. So channel can be executed by a channel program, that is a simple execution. Like whenever we have to perform any kind of input output, the memory is having a program, and inside that program there are instructions which are related to input output, and all the instructions which are related to input output are automatically you can say assigned to input output processor instead of giving them it to CPU. It is given to the input output processor and it performs all the tasks. Consists of channel command word CCW. Now this channel command word is going to perform the similar task which your CPU was doing in the case of DMA. It was telling how much data it has to read, how it has to read, from where it has to read. So such kind of initializations are now done with the help of CCW, which is channel command word. So now you can read each CCW specify the parameter needed by the channel to control the input output devices and perform data transfer operations. CPU initializes the channel by executing input output channel class instructions, and once initiated, channel operates independently of CPU. CPU just need to tell that I want to perform input output instruction, or I want to execute input output instruction. That's done. That is the only work of CPU. CPU once tell the channel to perform this task, channel, or you can say input output processor, will do that task by itself and just returns the address that whether the transfer was successful or it was unsuccessful. Here is a communication between CPU and IOP, that how do they both interact with each other. First of all, we have a CPU operation, and what is the operation? It just sends an instruction to check whether the IOP is working or not, whether the input output processor is working or not. So that is only the thing which it checks. After that, the second work is to transfer the status word to memory. Now, what is this? IOP device, once it gets a request from CPU to check the path, it simply transfers a slight value or slight small word to the memory, and CPU checks if that status is okay. Then it starts the it simply gives the instruction to execute the input output instruction. And once it is done, then CPU continues to work on its own. CPU works on its own, it doesn't do anything. Whereas the IOP, once received that instruction, it checks the input output program, it conducts the input output transfer by preparing the DMA, it prepares the status report that whether it was completed successfully or not. Once it is done, it interrupts the CPU and sends that I have sent the IOP status, you can check it. IOP status simply contains that whether the instruction is completed or not. Once it is there, the transfer status word to memory location and it checks it. If it is done, it will move forward. If there is more data or more instructions to execute, then it will simply send it a command that yes, I want to execute more instructions. Now there is something, or you can say, what type of communication is there between CPU and IOP? Because still they are sending messages to each other. Actually they are not transferring the messages to each other. What they are doing is, we have, let me just show it to you on board. Okay, so what they are doing, they are actually sharing a common memory. They are sharing a memory path. Like, this is memory, and there are two processes. One is CPU, and the other one is IO. Now, instead of sending the messages to each other, like IOP sends a message to CPU, or CPU sends a message to IOP, or something like that. Instead of doing that, what they do is they share a common space inside memory. They just have a shared space. When CPU wants to talk with IOP, it sends a message to this place. IOP reads this place. CPU writes at this place. If CPU writes at this place, it reads from that place. So there is a shared memory inside the system, which is accessed by CPU as well as IOP. So now the main authority over the memory is of CPU, but IOP can also use that CPU, that memory, to transfer, to make the transfers, like how to send the data from IOP, or by using DMA to memory. But to communicate with each other, they only have a shared space inside the memory. So that shared space is used to send the data. Now, in that shared space, when we talk about the transfer status word, so where this status word is transferred, it is not transferred to CPU. It is actually transferred to this place. It is at this place. Then CPU checks it from here, that what is the status. If it is correct, then it issues a input output instruction. Then that input output instruction is executed by CPU, by IOP, and once it is executed, the status report which is prepared by input output processor is again sent to this place. It stores it here. Then CPU checks it from this place, that whether it is done or not. If it is done, okay, move to the next instruction. If it is pending or there is some problem, it can reinitiate the process. So this is how your CPU and input output processor interacts with each other. Please do read these topics from your book as well. So we'll get a broader picture that how the current systems are working, how they are interacting with each other, what are the other type of processors which we have. Like we talked about IOP, input output processor. So we have a CPU. Along with it, we also have GPUs, your graphical processing units. Okay, they are performing all the graphic related tasks, how they interact with your CPU. So those all things will be there. You can read about them by using internet or by using your book. Okay. Thank you everyone. Thank you so much for your time. And this completes our chapter number 11. So we will start with the next topic in the next class. Thank you.